Okay, we're going to just continue on yesterday's lesson. Yesterday's lesson we dealt with degrees on a circle and a radian. And a radian, remember, is just the distance on the outside of a circle that is equal to the radius. So it's the same length, the same measure. We also learned how to change from degree to radian, and this you could use for today's lesson also. And all you had to do is multiply by pi over 180. And we learned how to change a radian to degree, multiply by 180 over pi. The reason why we can do that is because pi radians is the exact same thing as 180 degrees. They're the same. So what we want to do today is fill out the unit circle with our radians. How do we do that? Well, let's first fill out our circle with our degrees. And our key angles, the first one is 0 degrees. This one here was 30 degrees because these are coming from the 30, 60, 90 and the 45, 45, 90. And we can go around and actually just fill in all the multiples of 30. 30 times 0, 30 times 1, 30 times 2, 30 times 3, 30 times 4, 30 times 5, 30 times 6, 30 times 7, 30 times 8, 30 times 9, 30 times 10, 30 times 11, 30 times 12. It gets right back to where we were because all the way around the circle is 360 degrees. Those are all multiples of 30. Now notice there's not many left. They're just the ones in the middle, which are all multiples of 45. 45 times 1, 45 times 2, 45 times 3, 45 times 4, 45 times 5, 45 times 6, 45 times 7. All right, so those are all the angles of the unit circle are 30, 60, 90, because if you just look at this, this is a 30, 60, 90 right triangle where this is 30 degrees, this is 90 degrees, and this is 60 degrees. And then we also have the 45, 45, 90. If I drew that down there, and this one also would be a 30, 60, 90. And everywhere you go around the circle, this is a 30, 60, 90. This one would be 45, 45. This would be 30, 60. This would be 30, 60, 45, 45, and so on. So those are all our angles on the circle, our key angles. Now there's an infinite number of angles in a circle, because I could come up with 31.8 degrees, but that's not what we're focused on. On trig, we focus on these certain or special angles. They come from, again, the 30, 60, 90, and the 45, 45, 90. Now, I could use this right here and convert every single one of these to radians by multiplying by pi over 180. So you can always use that as a fallback, like how do I come up with those? Every single one of these, all you have to do is multiply by pi over 180. But there's an easier way to do it. If you can take, let's just start with 30 degrees and use what we learned yesterday and convert this to radians by multiplying by pi over 180. And you do that correctly, 30 goes into 180 6 times, so that's pi over 6. Okay? So I'm going to start with this first one here. Well, I can do multiples of pi over 6, but just be like multiples of 30. Well, 0 times pi over 6 is 0. This is radian, not degree, it's radian. Pi over 6 times 1 would be pi over 6. Pi over 6 times 2, or 30 times 2, which is 60, would give me 2 pi over 6. And we'll go back and reduce that in a minute. So 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, this is a multiple of 30, so 3 pi over 6. 120 is a multiple of 30, so that'd be 4 pi over 6. Again, we'll go back and reduce those in a minute. This one is 5 pi over 6. 180 is 6 pi over 6. This would be 7 pi over 6. 8 pi over 6. This is, again, it's a multiple of 30. 9 pi over 6. 10 pi over 6. And then this other one here's a multiple of 30, so 11 pi over 6. And then the last one, 12 pi over 6. Just all multiples of 30 degrees or pi over 6. Now let's just go back and reduce those. This reduces to pi over 3. This reduces to pi over 2. This one reduces to 2 pi over 3. That one's already reduced. This one reduces to just pi. That's already reduced. This reduces to 4 pi over 3. This reduces to 3 pi over 2. This one reduces to 5 pi over 3. That's already reduced. And this reduces to 2 pi, and it should, because all the way around the circle, we learned yesterday, the circumference is 2 pi r, but in this case, we call this a unit circle. The radius is 1, so 2 pi. And you'll notice almost all of them are done. The only ones missing are these ones right in the middle. So I take that 45 degrees and I convert that to radians. What is that in radians? Well, 45 goes into 184 times. So these in the middle are just multiples of pi over 4. 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, we already have that one. 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, we have that. 5 pi over 4, 6 pi over 4, we already have that. It reduces to the same thing. 7 pi over 4, and then the last one, 8 pi over 4, reduces to 2 pi. These are extremely important, and you need to practice filling out this circle, not only with degrees, but also radians. All right, now go ahead and do your homework.